And welcome to Candidates Corner on LPTV, Libertarian Party Television, a production of the Libertarian Party and Libertarian National Committee. Joe Bishop Henchman, Chairman. As always, John Gapso on the big board. My name is Pat Ford. I am your host. There are always a few purposes for this show. We want to give the Libertarian community an opportunity to meet our wonderful down ballot candidates. We want to challenge our candidates to incorporate what we call lunch pail voter issues into the conversation, but through a libertarian perspective. And of equal importance, it's an opportunity to create a bond, a recognition, a connection, if you will, between candidates across affiliates across this country and, well, across the world. But the individual in this case tonight running for town council, Tennessee, this is important to the party, to the philosophy, to the statement of principles, to our movement. As is, say, someone running for the mayoralty of New York City, the governor of Indiana, and on and on. Each election, an opportunity to put the libertarian message into very human, very real terms for communities, states, council districts, school districts that may have never met a libertarian before, much less, well, we don't use the word governing here, much less be stewarded as a community resource. So, joining us tonight, Rob Burke. He is running for the Morristown, Tennessee City Council. Rob, welcome to Candidates Corner on LPTV.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, thanks for joining us. And we love special elections here, and we love elections that are arbitrarily set by towns and seemingly interesting dates. And of course, clearly, the grand poobahs of Morristown, Tennessee, are Star Wars fans.
They must
right?
Be.
They have to be. And why is that?
Election day is May 4th, so May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you, and may the 4th be with the libertarian movement. Now, I've got to ask, this is as much a philosophical question as it is a generational question, and one of the really key issues of the day, of the moment in our conversation, Star Trek versus Star Wars.
I mean, we've got to go Star Wars because this is the movement right now. It would be unwise for me to say anything except Star Wars today.
Okay. I'll for tonight, I will go with you. I just live long and prosper. That's all I can say. So tell us. First of all, tell us about yourself. There's a little bit of a formulaic aspect to the show, but that's intentional. Rob, tell us about how you came to the libertarian movement. What was your libertarian moment, and what type of experiences and what you've done before in terms of either electoral politics or work within the party itself.
Sure. So I am very new to the party. I am, in fact, really for the past probably 4 or 5 years was just really trying to struggle in my identity and finding my identity in politics. Because I didn't feel like I had a political home. I understood and could relate to a lot of things from either side, but I also disagreed with many things from both sides at the same time. So just really trying to figure out what that looked like for me and doing a lot of research and at least here, I can't speak for everyone, but and everywhere, but at least here locally, if you're not a Republican, you're wrong. For that's just the way that the community believes. So just having that opportunity to think outside that box and really understand that there's more than just the two options that are typically put in front of us by the media, and having that opportunity to look into that and do that research and find out what the Libertarian Party stood for really helped me understand that was and is my political home. Is I just don't want government involved in my life, and I don't want it involved in your life. And as I go out and meet people and talk to people locally, and I share that thought process and tell them that when they say, what do you stand for? What do you want to be about? What do you want this town to be about? And I say, listen, I just want government to leave you alone. If you're not hurting anybody, then you shouldn't have any dealings with the government or very minimal. And they're like, yeah, man, I love that. I agree with you. So a lot of people here are libertarian at heart, but they've been raised to believe that that's a Republican view, although we all know that that's not true. So I believe that this is an opportunity to show them that, to show them what what we're going to be able to do and how we hold ourselves when we sit in this seat. What are the votes that are going to look like? What are the things that I'm going to champion? What are the things that I'm going to absolutely stand against? And I think people are going to like that, and they're going to say, I really appreciate the way that you have a say in these things. Tell me more about it. And I'm going to be like, that's libertarian for you. You are. This is what you are. You just didn't even know it. And I think that that's going to be a major victory just across the board for the party, for the city, as we continue to take those steps. So as far as what I've done politically, I have never been a candidate. I've never been in a race. I'm not a politician. I guess by definition I am now, but it's just not who I've ever been. But as I've continued over the course of, like I said, those kind of 4 or 5 years, just really studying and learning a lot of the issues, whether it's locally, nationally, globally, and learning what my positions were in those, I really understood that I had an opportunity to make a difference in at least here locally, and that I can take those values and take those things that I really believe and hold true to, and be able to share that with the city, and share that with like-minded people that I know that we have here.
Excellent, excellent. Talk to us about your city. First of all, the government setup. Do you have a mayor, a town manager?
Yes.
What's the layout of the physical government in Morristown?
Sure. So we have really both. So we have a mayor. We also have a city administrator, but the mayor's elected, of course. City administrator's not elected. We have 6 council seats, 1 for each ward. There's 4 wards in the city. So a council seat for each ward, and then 2 at-large council seats as well.
And what precipitated? Is this a special election that's going on?
No, this is just the general. So they split them up. They stagger them. So every 2 years, there's an election for council seats. So this election is for the 1st and the 3rd ward, as well as 1 of the at-large seats. And then in 2 years, we'll have the 2nd, 4th, and the other at-large. And the mayor's race will be in 2 years as well. So they stagger them just to kind of prevent completely cleaning house if that's the case, if that turned out that way.
And how many folks are running in your election for your district, for your seat?
For my seat, it is the incumbent and myself.
And is he or she a Democrat or Republican, independent?
Talk around the town is that he's very Democratic, but he's not put a lot of those that I have seen out there, just because it's a nonpartisan race. So I've not seen him or heard him talk about it or see him put it on anything. So I'm not sure.
Interesting. And how many voters in your district? What do you feel like the win has to be? How many votes do you have to get?
I believe, unfortunately, it's trending downward. 2 years ago, when the other seats were voted on, we had 800 and change come out. 2 years before that, so 4 years ago now, it was about 1,000. So, I'm going to go high just because the higher you go, the more guarantee you are to have that victory. I'd like to have 500 to secure it. I don't think that's my win number. My win number is probably more about 350 if I'm honest, but I'm shooting for 5.
Your state chair told me that you are perhaps one of the most, and by the way, you get some great candidates. Obviously, you get some great traditions already in Tennessee. As well as being the real home. And I hope anyone under the age, either under the age of 5 isn't listening, but Santa Claus, my understanding, Liberty Claus actually resides in your state.
He does. I've met him personally. It was great.
The Liberty Claus that matters, actually, the one who brings incredible gifts to young young men and women of all ages, and a living conscience, if you will, for those that may be on the political naughty list. But but you are, he argues, one of the most organized candidates he's ever met. And he was particularly impressed when he went out and did some door knocking for you, I guess. You've just got it laid out under control. Talk to us about the structure of your campaign. Are you using a campaign manager, or and what type of outreach are you doing in terms of for voters, organizations? Give us sort of a layout.
Sure. So I've done just about everything myself. I've had a little bit of help from family and a little bit of help, as you've already mentioned, people come and help knock some doors with me. So, but as far as managing it and running it and having the ideas and the focus of how I want the campaign to run has been solely just me reaching out to people. Most of the campaign has been door knocking. I know we've talked about that. So I was able to secure, of course, the voter registration information for all registered voters in the city. I also was able to secure within that, they put on the disc, of course, but within that, it was those who voted in the last 3 election cycles. So their names, their addresses, all of that. So I was able to tailor my efforts and my canvassing to that. So I initially, because you, at least here, I know it may be different in other areas, I need 25 signatures on a petition to get on the ballot initially. So I didn't even at that point secure the voter registration information. I was literally just going door to door, hitting every door. I brought a complete stack of voter registration cards, just asking them for support and asking them if they're, of course, registered. If they were not, I was handing them a voter registration card, trying to get some more people involved. That's a big part of what I want to see is in my campaign is more people involved at the city, just the constituents involved. I want them to be coming to the council. I want that open communication between the constituents and the council members and the mayor. I want those conversations to continue to happen. I want these people to feel like they're adequately represented and that they have a voice at the table. So I went door to door, getting all these signatures once, and actually I got more than the 25 intentionally, because you just never know if somebody is not a registered voter or not registered within a city, then that won't count and they scratch it. So what I did is I went door to door until the day before the deadline to turn in that petition was. And I went door to door and got as many signatures as I could. I didn't have at that point any bulletins, any door hangers. I had nothing to hand out, just because it really didn't make much sense to me to purchase and spend money. I didn't have any backing at that point. So it didn't make sense to spend any money if I didn't, for whatever reason, wasn't able to obtain those 25 signatures. So my goal was get those 25 signatures, get more than that, put my name out there, start talking it up, start really having the people understand that I want to be out in the community and I want to get to know the people. Once I turned that petition in, my very next step was to get that voter registration disc, and I put it all into Google Maps, and was able to list all those addresses and maps, put that, obviously, the Google Maps app on my phone, and I was literally walking around in my neighborhood and neighborhoods around with my phone, and it would just track me going point to point, going to these registered voters. And then that's when I was able to get some door hangers, in which I actually got enough support at the state convention. I talked a little bit about my campaign and got some good support there, and it was enough to cover the door hangers. So that was amazing. So I was able to do that, and I took the door hangers, going door to door, and just meeting the people has been a primary focus of the entire campaign.
No, that's outstanding. How many houses do you think you've knocked on, and did you meet any sort of resistance from folks who are COVID wary?
And that was one of my concerns. And I actually listened to one of the trainings that's on the LP website that I believe Kara hosted or shared, or at some point. I listened to one of those because I was a little weary at first, thinking, wow, is this really appropriate for me to even be knocking on doors in the midst of this pandemic? And, I get it. There's across the board, there's different feelings about it. Some people are, don't worry about it. I'm going to live my life exactly the way I want to. This doesn't matter. And other people are locking up their families and not leaving the house at all, and everything in between. So I was really wanting to be respectful. That was my main focus, is I didn't want anyone to feel like I was disrespecting them or their wishes by knocking on their door. And I really was hesitant at first, but after listening to that training was really insightful, and it just talked about providing them with that space, knocking on the door, standing several feet apart, having a mask, and then just kind of just reading how the people are responding. And at least here, I know across the country, it's going to be very different, and some communities are going to be very different than others. But here, it was overwhelmingly, they were overwhelmingly receptive to it. So many people were super thankful that I would come and spend my day and spend my hours walking and talking and just being in the community. I had very little resistance, and any resistance that I had, it was, I don't believe COVID related. I believe it was more that they were just not interested in politics, or that they were very interested in the incumbent and they were just like, nah, I don't want to talk to you. And that's all they said. And I said, okay, that's fine. Have a nice day. But they were very receptive. It was just great to get out there and to see their arms literally wide open, like, hey, come and talk. People really were interested in having that conversation. So
No, again, outstanding effort. One of the fun parts about this job as the host of the show is that I get to read newspapers literally from around the country, and I had not yet partaken in the offerings of the Citizen Tribune. Incredibly enough, but now I have, and there's a whole lot of stuff in there. It's amazing because local newspapers, which are obviously now largely digital, can really tell you about a community. I had not heard of a dog, for example, laying on the gas pedal of a truck and ending up in the middle of pen sentence. I'm sure that was quite the moment. What do you say? Good boy? Who's a good boy? But on the other hand, it's also reflective of the body politic. Your Chamber of Commerce, I guess, has been very, very active in supporting candidate forums, which is wonderful. Have you had a chance to participate in one yet, or
yes.
and how they were conducted, and how much fun is it to be a libertarian all of a sudden getting that type of local attention?
So yeah, I did. It was on April 13th. It was the day before early voting started. It was my first ever forum. It's the only forum. They only host one forum, and it was just a great opportunity to sit up there. It was not debate style. They had 5 slated questions that they prepared earlier, and they gave those out a few days early. So it gave me a little time to really think and chew on them a bit and see how I wanted to respond to those. And then there was an opening and closing statements, and they just kind of had it scheduled in a way that you, depending who went first, like for example, I went first on the opening statement, and then first on the first question, and then I believe I was second and fourth, and it just kind of bounced around. So it wasn't like the same person going first or last. So it was a really neat experience, especially since that's the first one I've ever partaken in. And it was nice to see, and I had a lot of really cool compliments afterwards. I don't feel typically nervous going into things like that. I'm a lot of times have been in the business of public speaking at some sorts, so that doesn't typically bother me much. But there was a little bit of, I felt like there was more riding on this for me, because if I said something wrong, or it just came out wrong, or somebody misunderstood maybe how I worded something, it could lose votes, and I recognize that going in, that just one false move, one just misstep could really hurt. So I was really just cognizant of that the entire time. And it is different, of course, to get all of this attention, there's I'm frequently in the paper now, even if it's, I mean, my picture was on the front page after immediately following the forum. I was thankful that I was not caught doing something, I guess, really embarrassing in the picture. So that was good. I appreciate the photographer making sure he didn't catch me like that. And, you know, but they have articles frequently just reminding people that we're going through early voting rather, and these are the dates, here's the candidates. That's been listed in there a few times. You know, the various social media accounts like the city has, or the mayor has one that he likes to post just different updates, just brief things, and he's mentioned it a few times. So just being able to get that attention, number one, it's different, but it's also cool. And to me, the best thing about it is it's free advertisement. I didn't have to pay for those, and my name's getting out there, so people are reading it, and hopefully they are they want to know more. They may just see my name in the paper and be like, I don't know who that guy is, let me check him out, and maybe it draws them to my Facebook page, and you know, the candidate page, or maybe draws them to whatever the case may be. They may find me and ask me some questions. I don't know.
No, it's very impressive, actually. And folks, if you want to see it in the flesh, go to citizentribune.com. And for a small community newspaper, they do one heck of a job. And there's no less fewer on the homepage of the citizentribune.com, 6 different videos highlighting the different questions folks are facing, and it's run by the Morristown, Tennessee Chamber of Commerce. And you know, it's you don't see that a lot, and that's why I wanted to remark on it, because so many community newspapers have gotten away from, well, reporting on the community. So what issues? Well, first of all, let's step back a second. Tell us about Morristown. Tell us, you know, where do folks work? What is a major industry? Would you call it a rural community? Would you call it a bedroom community? Give us sort of a flavor of Morristown, Tennessee.
So we are nestled right in between Knoxville and the Tri-Cities area. So those are, you know, pretty built up areas. So we are right in between that. We have pretty good interstate access off of Interstate 81. So I mean, there's a lot there. A lot of people come here. A lot of people retire here. Just a mixture of different types of people that live here. Just because, number one, just the beautiful area that we have. Number two, there's you spoke of the industry. We are a significant hub for a lot of different factories. We have a very big industrial community that's and everything from automobile parts to plastics and food items, all kinds of things. So a lot of people work in those industries. I believe about a quarter of the people that live here work in one of those types of factory industries here in the city. The city is 30,000 people approximately, but on any given workday, we may be up to 120,000 people within the city, because so many people come into the city to work in these factories. What else? Let me see. What did I miss? Sorry, I'm trying to throw it all in there.
No worries. What issues, you know, this show began really in the earliest stages of COVID, and maybe just a little bit before. What issues really are resonating with voters right now, both COVID and non-COVID related? What's in the minds of folks in Morristown?
One of the issues, COVID related, I would say one of the biggest issues was the county mayor, not the city mayor, but the county mayor had the authority to put down mask mandates. And he did so for several months, and they were just lifted within this past like 3 weeks or so. So that's something, not something that I think we will see resonating with city voters for city like city topics, because the city didn't really have much control or say over that. But just generally speaking, COVID related, the biggest thing I would say is those mask mandates. people don't really typically in this area like to be told what to do. They don't like mandates especially from the government, and I tend to agree. So now other city related issues, several including recent tax hikes over the past few years, two different home property tax increases. There's been a trash fee increase, the sewer rates increase. We are now at $12 per 1,000 gallons of sewer. We were at one point the third highest in the state. The city was. I believe we've surpassed them now. We are very likely the highest in the state. People don't like it. People don't like being told that they have to pay more for these things. Another hot topic issue has been a community center. That was one of the recent property tax increases, was to fund this approximately $35 million community center, in which when you talk to the council, you talk to the mayor, you talk to certain people up there, everybody wants it. This is what the community wants. This is what the community deserves. But when I'm out talking to people, I don't hear that very often. Most people said, I don't want this. It is extremely an extreme amount of money. I won't use it, or I will get very little use out of it. And my taxes shouldn't have been raised for it. Another argument about the community center, even those that are somewhat okay with the decision to build the community center, are not happy with its location. They are building it on the very west end of town, and a lot of people, either midtown or on the east end, feel as though it's being built for the rich people, because a lot of part of the west part is more developed and has really endured a lot of development over the past few years, and including some obviously some nicer homes as well. So that's somewhat of a hot button issue for especially people on the other end of town, feeling like it should have been more centrally located. I agree, not only for the centrally located, but I also agree about the location, because it is being put directly across, essentially, from a Walmart that's been built for a few years now. Many restaurants and fast food restaurants are being built right there. They're developing that land for more businesses to come in, all right there in the middle of that. It just seems like that would have been prime real estate for another company to come in, bring more jobs to the area, bring more resources, whatever service they're going to provide, bring that to the area. And now it's going to be used on something that will never be able to hold its own. It's not going to, any fees associated to attend or to be a member of this community center will not pay for the $35 million, of course. That's why the tax increase was needed. And it also will not pay for the salaries and the exorbitant sewer rates and the electricity. It won't keep it running. It's not going to be able to stay afloat. So we, the people, are going to have to pay to keep this thing running. So those are some of the issues. Some others are infrastructure related, as for I think most areas. They feel like if they're paying these amount of taxes, that our roads should be perfect, that we shouldn't have all this congestion. Maybe we should figure out how to build the roads a different way, and instead you're spending our money and somewhere else. So that's just another issue that I hear a lot about.
It seems like you've got a really nicely developing downtown community, and it seems like the Chamber of Commerce is playing a very provocative role in that, as opposed to what happens in most towns, which is you get an economic development director that's employed by the town, and they start using town money to attract businesses. How important is the downtown community? And it's fun to see in your community, they're already ready to roll out the festivals. And again, they seem to be privately organized and privately run. Is that the culture of the community, that the business community pitches in, as opposed to waiting for government to do it?
And that's been something that they have done, these different festivals, different, bringing in different artists and music scenes and just different events. And that's just something that they've always just taken a hold of and just running with it. Obviously, COVID has slowed that down for a year. And I really feel like we are trying to hot and heavy get on it because people miss it. We're trying our best to get back to some sense of normalcy, if that's even a thing. And that is the way that these businesses and the community has best decided that that's how we return back to that, is get back to those types of things, get back to these community events. And I 100% agree with it. And I'm excited for these to come back. You're right. The chamber plays a large role in that. We've got some new leadership there, and there's also there was another agency that kind of was a collaborative thing that, for example, was like over the farmers market and things of that nature. But the chamber's now absorbing those responsibilities as well. So there's a lot of new things that are happening with the chamber, taking on the new responsibilities and taking on a new director and things of that nature. So I'm very interested to see, kind of how that pans out in the next few months, and what direction it takes. But from best that I can tell, even with those changes, they're not slowing down and trying to bring some of these things back to the community. And like you mentioned earlier, sponsoring the forum and just being really involved. I'll tell you, there at every city council meeting, a representative is always there, just taking it in and being a part of it. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate anybody that comes and takes their time and spends their time to know what's going on in the city and to be a part of it like that, and just be a partner of it. So they are an integral part.
Let's talk about some of the other issues facing a community right now. Schools. Are your schools regional? Are they a part of the Morristown, if you will, government structure? And how is that working out for folks? Are the schools well rated? Are people happy?
So the schools are countywide school system. So the city doesn't have any schools. I mean, the schools are within city limits, sure, but the schools are not run by the city. The county has its own school system. So they're fairly well rated. People are pretty happy with school system. We have a school superintendent who is on top of it and really very involved with the community, very involved with each of his schools, and really wanting to do what's best for the students and his staff. So I think that helps out tremendously. The current structure, well, let's go back. So they really did a hybrid model where there were some in person, but I'd say 95% were elected to be virtual. But they did have a handful of students in the class. They have now moved to very few people are allowed to be virtual, and most of the students are in person. And it is my understanding that the plan is, I guess we'll see what changes in the next 3 or 4 months or so, but the plan coming back in the fall is that everybody would be in person. And that's the expectation at this point.
Mm-hmm. And generally speaking, I mean, are charter schools part of the picture, if you will, in Morristown?
So we do have several, for example, like Christian academies. There's some, whether they're in the county or right outside the county, that do draw a lot of students and play a big role in the education sector of what's going on in the community. But obviously they are individually kind of run and managed, if you will. So they are not a part of the county system. So I'm not sure, to be honest with you, what those, I know they're going in person because I have to pass one all the time, and there's people in the car line and the pickup and drop off lines all the time. But I don't know specifically, I don't know details as much as I do what's going on in the county.
And of course, the what's on everyone's mind in America after the last few weeks is, of course, policing. Is cannabis legal in Tennessee? Is there a medical cannabis program?
So we have a lot of people that are really fighting for that, even at the legislative levels. We have not gotten that passed, but we foresee that it will be soon enough. But no, not at this time. There's a lot of people that support it, but being so heavily Republican in so many parts of the state, most of the state, it's that's really what's holding it down is they're trying to remain true to their party rather than doing what the people want.
Interesting. And so you're sort of an exurb, I guess, if you will, of Knoxville. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. Yeah. We're 45 minutes northeast Knoxville.
Okay. So, I mean, in terms of the greater Knoxville area, can you give me sort of a reflection, recognizing that you don't live there, you're out in your own community, but, in that part of Tennessee, is community policing a concern? Is how are relationships with law enforcement?
I think, things trickle down from what's happening nationally. Even if there aren't specific concerns, if you will, that this officer treated me this way or this happened another way, things trickle down. And when you start seeing on the media, on whatever media outlet, of all of these different instances, it just puts that question in the back of people's minds of, is that going to happen here? Is that going to happen to me, or is that going to happen to my friend or my cousin or my brother? I think we don't see that as much. Even, as far as I know, even in some of the larger cities, even in Nashville, I don't feel like we see a lot of what's kind of been going on just nationally in a lot of these cities with the police force and how they've gotten into a bit of hot water and how they're treating the people. But certainly we don't see it here. We don't see, I actually met with the police chief and talked to him, was a great conversation. And a lot of the people that I've talked to that have had dealings or run-ins with local officers, they have said that they've been treated with respect and then didn't feel, any which way about it. But I do feel like it's on the back of people's minds of, if it can happen in this city or that city, or fill in the blank, if it can happen this place, it can happen anywhere, and anywhere includes here. So that's why one of the things that I really brought up and really had a conversation about with the police chief was that accountability and making sure that we have the appropriate gear as far as like body cams, and we do have that stuff, but not just having it, but maintaining it and having things that are the equipment that is very good, top of the line equipment, the best that we can get, so that we can keep these officers accountable. And not only just keeping officers accountable, vice versa. I think it's going to be in both parts. If you have that equipment that shows what's really happening on the scene, it's going to be an opportunity, again, keep these officers accountable for their actions. It's also going to protect the officers if somebody had some kind of claim against them if it didn't happen. But then also, I think a third part that is not being talked about as much that should be is it provides opportunities for trainings. And when you call somebody someplace and it says this call's being recorded for quality assurance, same thing. Like, these interactions are being recorded for quality assurance. Not only are we going to pull you aside and say, hey, look, you shouldn't have done it this way. Maybe we should do it this way. Now we're going to train the entire staff, the entire department. When you run situations like this, you need to be doing this. Like, there needs to be this standard. And not saying that there isn't, because I don't know it that intricately. But I think that monitoring and that close monitoring provides those opportunities, especially as we have a lot of people, obviously not just here, I'd say all over the place, a lot of people that suffer with different mental health issues. And how do we as a community embrace that and support that? And how does the police community protect and serve and do what they're supposed to do, but also maintain that level of ensuring that they understand the situation. If I walk into a building and I have whatever mental illness that's going on, there's got to be an opportunity when possible, to try to talk that person down, and the force needs to be the absolute last thing. And unfortunately, we're not seeing that nationally anymore. So
Excellent, excellent. Has there been a libertarian candidate in your community before you, or are you the first?
I'm no, I'm absolutely the first. I just recently found 3 or 4 others that agreed that they would actually come out and say, yes, I'm libertarian as well. Only 3 or 4 that I know of. As I
Mhm.
mentioned earlier, and I will always say this, there are tons of libertarians here. They just don't know it yet. They just don't understand the verbiage of it. But what they believe, they're libertarian.
Right, and that's a great way to look at it, folks. I mean, ultimately, we've got the whole wide world in front of us here, sitting before us as a what I call a target-rich opportunity. I'm not one to waste a lot of time with folks who are entrenched, so deeply entrenched, deeply personally affiliated with any of these two parties, because there are so many folks, regular Americans, who are crave, if you will, what we represent, who are purely libertarian without even ever thinking of themselves as political. And let's focus on communities like Morristown, where we've got a blank slate, and we've got answers and solutions that also represent with the preferred lifestyle, if you will, of the individual. I mean, ultimately, we represent the ultimate minority, the individual. No, it's you've got what? You've got about a month, a little over. How many weeks do you have left? What, about 2 weeks?
A week and a half.
Week and a half. Holy cow! So let's engage in shameless self promotion, if you will. Here, it's our favorite part of the show. If folks can just send a little love our guests' way in the week and a half that we've got left, then let's do so. But tell folks how they can reach out to you. Maybe if they can send you just a little, and it's a challenging time. So we don't go on this show looking to fundraise or browbeat or engage in arm twisting cash maneuvers here. But we do say that for folks who are running these hyper local campaigns, and they're so important, it's an opportunity to represent in real life and again, we don't use the word governing, what stewarding a community's resources can be like as a libertarian. We are proof of concept, every single one of us, in our everyday lives. How we interact with people with respect to our if you will, our political affiliation, how we interact with government, how we interact as a volunteer in the community, all of that. We are the standard bearers for our party, every one of us. If we're going to claim to be the party of the individual, then each of us needs to look at our public and private lives and say, how can we be more libertarian in our life? And how can we plant that seed? And I always harken back to a conversation I had with Larry Sharp. Many of us have had that conversation about how to plant the seed of libertarianism. Our guest tonight is doing exactly that. Think of yourself, if you will, as one of those one of those one of those folks out in the middle of the desert, if you will. In this case, it's a political desert, in the middle of the jungle, if you will, but it's a political jungle, and you're bringing the word to people for the very first time. So tell folks how they can reach out to you. Maybe send you a couple bucks. Maybe folks, if maybe give up that Starbucks. Around my household, we call it $5. Maybe it's $6 now, but give up $6. Maybe a little less, like going a whole paycheck for shopping, and send our guest a little bit of, as we say in Rhode Island, a little bit of scroll to ease the path and to build a libertarian tradition in a state that is becoming representative of just how to do libertarian politics.
Well, you definitely can reach out on my Facebook page. I've got a candidate page, or you can just find me on my personal page is cool too. That's one way to just connect with me. On that candidate page, I have a link to a PayPal if you're interested. You can certainly donate there. the biggest thing now, I know we're kind of right here at the home stretch. We're rounding third. We can see home, and we're getting ready to slide right in. So I think the biggest thing now is liking the page, following the page, sharing it, because social media is such a small world. It doesn't matter if you're watching right now from Montana. Sharing things can be shared, multiple times, and you just never know who it's going to get in the hands of. And all it takes is one person, getting the right person, one person's hand, for that person to share it and for it to get out to the masses. So even if you're just a stepping stone to that, and sometimes you may never even know that you're being a stepping stone or acting as that catalyst for that change. But I think the biggest thing I'd like to see right now is just getting that word out, even if you're not local. You just never know who picks it up. I have one more push that I'm looking to get. I've done one mailer. I didn't send it to you guys, so you don't have to put up the screen, but I can just flash it real quick. So I did one mailer this way. It's opposite. So I did one mailer. I kind of showed a little bit about the difference since my opponent has been in. Sorry, the glare there is killing me. Has been in office since 2009. I did a little picture of what the difference is from now to 2009. Also shared a little bit about what he has not voted against, like those tax increases, the garbage fee increases that he did not. In fact, he strategically just didn't show up for the council meeting that they were voting on this thing. He just didn't show up that day. So for me, not telling your voice, not sharing your voice, not using your voice is using your voice. If you're not saying no, then you're saying yes. So, and then I also put at the bottom about how, the times have changed. So if the times are changing, a lot has changed since 2009 when he was first elected office. So if times have changed, your council should reflect that change. So that was the first mailer I put out to about 780 people, as I was really trying to hyper focus on those that have recently voted, just because of limited funding, of course. So next week I have what was put on at the very front. I don't know if Pat, if we can go back to that, that the Star Wars theme thing with the May the 4th be with you. I'm putting out one more mailer with that on it. I think it'll really resonate with a lot of people, a lot of Star Wars fans, or a lot of people might just think it's a cool graphic, and that just might be the little tip that they need in that scale to vote for me. So I'm interested in putting that out to as many people as I can next week as we get to election day, which will be the following Tuesday. So as many as I can put out will literally be dependent on how much money is left in the campaign account. I am going to hyper focus on, again, those. I actually took the list every day. The county, the election commission emails which people voted. Of course, I can't see who they voted for, but that they showed up and they voted. So I'm taking that list, as we were talking about those organizational skills. What I'm doing is I'm taking that list that I originally got from the voters in the last 3 election cycles, and I'm removing them from that master list if they've already voted. So I'm just trickled down only those that have recently voted in the last 3 election cycles, as well as and those that have not voted yet. So I can just get it to the hands of the people that really need to get it to. So depending on how much funding I have, my first thought is let's send it just to the people that voted 2 years ago in the most recent election cycle, because I could probably put out 300. I'm going to guess 375 or so at this point, mailers. So it won't be too much. I've got enough to cover that. But if I have more to cover, then I'll look for the last 2 election cycles, and even more so the last 3. So obviously, the more funding, the more I can get those things out to people. So if you are able to and want to share in that, I plan on getting those mailers out probably by Tuesday at the latest. So if that's something you're interested in, I'd greatly appreciate it. Or again, like I said, get on the Facebook. I've got the Instagram one as well. You could just search me, Rob Burke, for Morristown, Tennessee City Council. I do less work on there just because I don't have as much of a following, and I'm really trying to just reach as many people. And the demographics of the voters are a little bit older typically, and those little bit of older people prefer Facebook over Instagram. So so that's the way I feel like you could best support me with as we're coming down the slide to end this thing.
Well, again, congratulations on your efforts. You're a warrior. You're doing an amazing job of representing the philosophy and also the work ethic of the Libertarian Party, the movement, the principles. And again, I've said this many times on the show, outside of the men and women who are engaged in the defense of these United States, running for political office with all the tensions, the invasions of privacy, the stress, then the stress of being elected is perhaps the most patriotic thing that you can do, not just for the country, but for the folks in your community, the folks who you're willing to be a steward, if you will, of shared resources and shared efforts. It's critical to our nation's future, but most importantly, to the future of all the individuals that comprise the unique mosaic that is, in fact, Morristown, Tennessee. I want to close on a quote because you'll understand where I stand in the debate of Star Trek versus Star Wars. And I want to quote, well, Leonard Nimoy and Spock. A life is like a garden. Perfect moments can be had, but not preserved except in memory. And so I say to you, sir, live long and prosper. You've been listening to Candidates Corner on LPTV, a production of the Libertarian Party and Libertarian National Committee. Joe Bishop Henchman, Chair. As always, a big thank you to John Bigapso on the big board. He volunteers a couple of nights a week after spending a full and rewarding day at his day's employment. He's the one who gives you the graphics and the insights and the maps and the sayings and the great questions. I'm your host, Pat Ford. It is a unique honor to serve the party, the movement, the philosophy in this manner. We'll be back on Monday night when we have a little adventure with affiliates. We're on every Monday and Friday night, 9 o'clock Eastern Time on LPTV and, of course, the Facebook page of the Libertarian Party. Folks, have a wonderful weekend, and we hope to see you Monday night. If you'd like to participate in this program, just reach out to me. I'm everywhere on Libertarian social media, Pat Ford. And we'd love to schedule on, particularly folks who are having these sort of interesting election day, midterms, special elections, mid-year elections. It's an opportunity for the party who is otherwise in a building mode, if you will, for the next major cycle. It's an opportunity for the party to volunteer, to get involved, to stretch their muscles a little bit, to support people around the country who are willing to be candidates for the Libertarian Party. We'll see you Monday night. Good night.